There was a lot of chippiness, a lot of goals, but more importantly, a lot of saves as the Florida Panthers win and get one step closer to a playoff spot.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, April 7th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also subscribe to the YouTube channel and send in your screenshot to me at LO_FLA Panthers on Twitter or Instagram, or send it to me at LockedOnFLAPanthers@gmail.com for your chance to win 2 free tickets to the Florida Panthers versus Toronto Maple Leafs game. Best of luck, everybody. And you guys might want to enter that contest because there is a possibility that game on Monday night could be a possible clincher. Just saying, everybody. So maybe. But I don't know where to start. It was a crazy, chippy game between these two. And man, when you think about the Florida Panthers and being outshot, almost double the amount of shots that the Ottawa Senators had, and still finding a way, the opportunistic Panthers found a way to get a 7-2 win over the Ottawa Senators. And you know what day it is? It's Friday, which means it is a Fairbanks Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. And before I unmuted Nick Fairbanks's microphone, I think he was doing the rap air horn noise right before I unmuted him. But Nick, welcome back to the show, and great to be chatting on a victorious Fairbanks Friday.
Bang, bang. Yes. Quite the game that we had tonight. Glad we're going to be able to break it down, and just glad Florida's 2 points closer to a playoff spot.
Yep, and that magic number happens to be at number 5 at the moment right now for the Florida Panthers. And just think about, when you think about how this game started, I mean, the Ottawa Senators were starting Levi Merriline, only his second career start, got an OT loss against the Carolina Hurricanes just recently. And the possession numbers were favoring the Ottawa Senators very early. And what were the Ottawa Senators doing right? They were winning the faceoffs early on, and the Blue Liners were getting the shots on goal. Of their 21 shots in the first period, 10 of them came from Blue Liners. And of course, yes, the blue line for Ottawa is depleted at the moment. Of course, you're asking Jake Sanderson, who's very young in this league, to take a bigger role for the Sens. But even then, Alex Lyon standing tall, and especially when the Florida Panthers were allowing Brady Tkachuk, and we'll get more into Brady Tkachuk a little later. I mean, he was getting through the defense. There was a few times where he was like a swing and a miss for right in front of the net early on, and that was shortly after the Florida Panthers scored their first goal, which was great patience by Matthew Tkachuk getting it to Brandon Montour to get it past Merriline, and of course the second one on the power play off the draw, gets it down low, and then lots of patience for Aleksander Barkov to beat Merriline again. But also Alex Lyon was setting the tone once again for the Panthers. Nick,
he's been unbelievable. He showed flashes of a former Panther goaltender. I think everybody knows the guy by the name of Beezer. Not a really big guy, but he's making the timely saves, and he's a brick wall in that net right now. So Florida is rallying behind that, and I think tonight was a signature win. It really shows the character that this team has, because in previous years, I would have said that this team would have folded after all the skirmishes and the fights and everything. They would have probably backed down, or like, hey, we're up, 3-1, they're going to let them back in. So Lyon is definitely driving the bus right now. Matthew Tkachuk came in and proved a point that he is better. And he just wanted to make sure that Ottawa knew where they were. They're no longer a playoff team at all. Like, they're done. So put the stamp on them.
Officially eliminated after the regulation loss tonight against the Florida Panthers. I mean, and you think about how, the going into that second period, which the second period, they said on the broadcast how long it lasted. The second period alone lasted 56 minutes. The New York Islanders versus Tampa Bay Lightning game finished 2 minutes after the Florida Panthers versus Ottawa Senators game ended. And that game between the Bolts and the Islanders started a half hour after. Just goes to show the goals, the amount of stoppages, the amount of skirmishes as well for this game. DJ Smith made the decision to pull Merrilainen after the shorthanded goal, which great by Barkov breaking up that pass and then leading a rush with him and Sam Reinhart and Gus Forsling to get it past Merrilainen. And it really started with Matthew Tkachuk's hit on Alex DeBrincat, and clean hit by Tkachuk first of all, but it was really as well as Brady Tkachuk, the brother. First time was a slip. He slipped and fell into line, but at the same time, you have to make a call there because look what happened the second time. All hell broke loose for this Panthers team.
It did, and you could see it kind of build up from there. I think the hit by Tkachuk kind of got the water boiling, but then as soon as they started going after Lyon, because that was the only way that they were going to get it past him. Unfortunately, they were trying to rock him and get his confidence shaken a little bit. So what do? You start running the goalie. I play beer league. Don't do that. You have to be. I don't know. It's classless, in my opinion. They can't be doing that. And, I don't think it's above Brady doing that kind of stuff. He's been known to be a chirper and, he'll do anything, basically. So I hope he learns kind of from this because he got tossed from the game after that, if I believe. And, as you said, they should have called a penalty on the first one, because then they lost control. The refs lost control of the game.
Yeah, and you see the refs also take Brady Tkachuk didn't get tossed until a little later, but there was a moment after that where the referees were bringing in the two captains of Brady Tkachuk and Aleksander Barkov at center ice, and the conversation was like, "Hey, we're not going to be playing a game like this." And it was a little too late when having that meeting, and of course, you think about also after Claude Giroux gets it to 3-1. To cut the deficit to 2, and Patrick Brown dumps snow on Alex Lyon, and of course, Radko Gudas really not afraid to go after him neither. And then Eric Stahl going into the net, being out of the game for a little bit with the net being knocked loose as well, and then going to the box so many times. I mean, let me look at the PIM real quick for both teams. 88 for the Senators, 78 for the Panthers in this game on Thursday night. And just it was, I was hoping that we were going to see it end by the third period, but I mean, it was just I also think about it with the Ottawa Senators. They knew that this was their last breath when it came to trying to get to the postseason. It didn't really come until what you're talking about Brady getting tossed. It didn't come until 8:24 of the second period, where crashes in net again and a scuffle skews that. It's because it was a secondary fight between him and Mark Stahl, and the amount of misconducts with Mark Stahl, Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk, DJ Smith, just so many to name for this game, and just. It just got out of hand when it should have, and Carter Verhaeghe also was pushed into Alex Lyon a few minutes later, even after all those misconducts were handed neither. And also think about this, the Panthers and what they were able to do and respond after the Sens were crashing the net. I mean, Etsu's scoring off a rebound on a power play, and then the Panthers killing off a 5-on-3 with Ekblad going to the box for roughing, Nick Cousins going for holding, and then as they go out the box, Ekblad lifts it, and then Nick Cousins go on a rush all by himself. It's kind of like a little bit of karma for the Sens.
No doubt. I mean, in previous games, you could say, maybe you want to match them toe to toe and get physical, with the Senators. But tonight was definitely all about just getting payback on the scoreboard. And, I tweeted out about it like, hey, if they're going to keep playing this game, Senators keep taking penalties. We'll keep scoring on the power play. So I have to say, I think that Cousins goal was the highlight of the game for me, outside of just Alex Lyon just being ridiculous in net. Just because I think just that last goal that he scored just set the stadium off, and it really just capped really what that game was about. So definitely a great game for Florida. Hopefully they can, take that energy and take it into Washington on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one more game misconduct, and there's just so many. So pre-recording, Nick and I also spoke about this, that we might be all over the place. But you know what? That game was all over the place. So forgive me, Panther fans, for being a little all over the place when trying to just continuing to keep track. Kostelic also had a game misconduct as well, and then Alex DeBrincat and Matthew Tkachuk also got theirs as well, and that was later in the third period, which we thought that going into the third period, the Florida Panthers were going to, it was going to be more calm, knowing that this game was over. But no, the Senators were not happy. They were down big, and of course the frustration and the lack of composure really showed in that one. That's for sure. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more of Alex Lyon's performance, more of how the Florida Panthers just were able to continue scoring on the power play, flipped it from last Monday's game, and just have more of a conversation about the goaltending situation here for the Florida Panthers. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about Indeed. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish that you could handpick the best stars on your business team? If you're building your talent roster, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like matching, assessment, and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed US data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications to match your must-have requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Segment number 2 here on this Fairbanks Friday edition of the show, where the Florida Panthers are coming off a 7-2 win over the Ottawa Senators. And Nick, ever since that third period against Toronto, the Florida Panthers have outscored their opponents 23-6 since last Wednesday. And man, the scoring that the Florida Panthers have had, the goaltending that they're getting, Alex Lyon, I mean, the 58 is a strange number as far as this season series between the Florida Panthers and the Ottawa Senators. The first matchup on October 29th, the Florida Panthers got 58 shots on goal for a win over Ottawa back in October. 58 saves was needed for Alex Lyon to break the record for the Florida Panthers for saves in a single game in franchise history. And Alex Lyon, unfortunately, he came 2 saves short from it. Of course, the Florida Panthers got a power play late, so the Ottawa Senators were not able to get more of those shots on goal. But it's crazy. The Florida Panthers stopped I'm repeating this again, but the Florida Panthers stopped a full 2-minute 5-on-3 where, even though Alex Lyon was great, the Panthers just they were getting in the shooting lanes while down 2. I think that's more of like bad Senators as far as like how they're connecting on their passes and when it comes to their shooting lanes. But then the Florida Panthers of their own had a 5-on-3 later in the game. But Alex Lyon, he joins some great company when it comes to 50 plus saves in a game. Roberto Luongo, Craig Anderson,
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Vokoun, and I'm forgetting one other, and John Van Beesbrook. That's another. Those are notable names in the history of this almost 30-year history of this franchise, and Alex Lyon finds himself in that company, and an unlikely story for Alex Lyon to be here.
Yeah, and he's doing all this while he's 30 years young. You know, he's had a couple stops along the way. You know, he won a Calder Cup last year with the Chicago Wolves, who are now going to be an independent entity starting next season. So that'll be interesting to see what they decide, what the Carolina Hurricanes decide to do. But back to Lyon, he's just in the zone. He's feeling it. You know, you could see during the game when the Senators were trying to get in his head or try to shake him and everything like that. You know, he was very composed. He didn't let anything kind of bother him and everything. I kind of mentioned it in our, chat and everything that I kind of feel bad for him because every time he covers the puck, he has to put his head down, like his face towards the ice, so he doesn't get snowed all over. But he's come in at the most pivotal times during the season. And Goldie talked about this on the broadcast. He did it back in January, and he's doing it now, putting the team on his back and making sure that they get to where they want to go. So I have a question for you, and I've been thinking about this. Let's say Florida does make the playoffs because they haven't clinched anything yet.
I think I know where you're going here.
Yeah, this is where, Do you start Lyon in the playoffs, or do you go to Bobrovsky?
I think you got to ride with the hot hands.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to. I know you're paying $10 million to someone, but the run that the Florida Panthers are on right now, I mean, and think about where the Florida Panthers were on that Tuesday on the second end of a back-to-back after playing the Detroit Red Wings when they went to Philly. At the time, we were thinking maybe Alex Lyon is just made to be a backup, and maybe he would only be getting one start. But man, maybe I'm living too much in the moment right now. But the moment is the Florida Panthers on the longest winning streak of the season. Before 2 games ago, the Florida Panthers had not had a 4-game winning streak this year. It's at 5 currently. The Florida Panthers magic number is 5. And the number one reason, or maybe 1A, because you could argue Matthew Tkachuk as well, which Matthew Tkachuk now has a career high in over 105 points, passing last year. He's the reason. The Lion King right now is the reason. And there was tweets from the people who were there tonight about how the Florida Panthers changed it to the Circle of Life now as their locker room song. But I don't know how, even if Bobrovsky's healthy enough to start on Saturday against the Washington Capitals, how can you take Alex Lyon out right now?
You can't, because if this was on the flip side and Bobrovsky was hot, like what we were going through last year where the team won 13 games in a row, yeah, you have to put in the person that's going to give you the best chance to win and what the team feels comfortable with right now. Because number one, they have a lot of good things going on. The defense likes playing in front of them, even though there might be some chances that they shouldn't be letting up. Like I think in the first period, there was probably about 10 slot chances that they had out of the 21, but Alex was there to stop everything. But it's a feeling, it's a vibe that they have right now. And to disrupt that just to, let Bob get a game or, take Lyon out, thanks for getting us to the playoffs, and then put Bob in cold, it's not a recipe for success.
I would agree. But I don't think let's say Bob does come back on Saturday, even to back up. He's going to get I think he's going to get at least one game. I would say I would think that he would get at least one because of, like you said, being cold. But I also think about this with Alex Lyon as well. You're hot right now, but at the same time, like you said, Bobrovsky's last start was, I'm going to look at the calendar,
It was
March
Ottawa.
27th. March 27th.
Mm-hmm.
In case something happens, you're going to allow Sergei Bobrovsky to go 3+ weeks without a single start. I mean, it's not an injury where you can just put him on a conditioning stint to Charlotte. You can't. This isn't. This is just a non-COVID illness. Well, I shouldn't say just. That would be very insensitive of me to say. But a guy would be cold going into that situation. I think he would get at least one because you have to see what you got. But at the same time, I mean, I also think about it like this, and I know I'm going around in circles at the moment with your question. The next opponent right now for the Panthers, the Capitals. That's an opponent Bobrovsky loves playing. So does Carter Verhaeghe, obviously. But
yes.
But I could see that, but I could also see the reasoning of Paul Maurice not wanting to ruin a good thing that's going on too. So I'm conflicted, not gonna lie. But like this team is trending the up, and especially the fact that the other teams chasing the Panthers won as well.
Mm-hmm.
Pittsburgh beat Minnesota. The New York Islanders beat Brian Elliott and the Tampa Bay Lightning, and Tanner Jeannot went down with a pretty horrible injury, at least from when I was watching it. I was watching on mute, but it's still, despite them controlling their destiny, zero room for error.
Exactly, and that's why I kind of posed the question, because Lyon's on this roll right now, and what happens if we do put Bob in, just get a game in, and they get destroyed?
Yeah,
and he's the culprit. What's that going to do? Is that going to end their playoff hopes? Number one, and number two, if it doesn't, how's the team going to respond then? Like what kind of pressure is that going to put on them then that they don't already have? Is it just going to put more on, or maybe this team will respond like they have all season? But I don't want to ruin a good thing right now, so I would be starting Lyon throughout.
Yeah, I wouldn't be angry either way, regardless of what happens. But I'm leaning more towards Alex Lyon. I mean, you look at the schedule that the Pittsburgh Penguins have coming up. It gets easier for them. Yeah, they lost against Detroit a few weeks ago, and the Florida Panthers will actually know the result of their game, that game prior to taking the ice on Saturday night against the Washington Capitals, because they play at 1. And then Chicago and Columbus, two teams in the Bedard sweepstakes, and the New York Islanders, their next few games are, hold on, pulling up theirs real quick. Home against Philly, road against Washington, and then home against Montreal. So Panthers have the toughest schedule remaining of the 3. So that's also what makes it this decision, if it comes down to it, for Paul Maurice just to decide. And but at the same time, Jacob mentioned it a few days ago. It's a good problem to have. So it's definitely a good problem to have. And when it comes to goaltending, and you have 2 guys who are capable of winning a game for you, I mean, it's definitely a great situation to have. But this will be a great situation. This is a great opportunity for us to segue to segment number 3, where we're going to preview the Florida Panthers versus Washington Capitals game on Saturday night, and just discuss more about the good vibes going for this Florida Panthers team after picking up a 7-2 win over the Ottawa Senators. We're going to discuss that next here on the show. But first, we're going to tell you all about FanDuel Sportsbook. And the NBA playoffs and NHL playoffs are almost here. Now's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line, point scores, to threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss your chance for a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Third and final segment here on this Fairbanks Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, where the Florida Panthers are coming off a 7-2 win over the Ottawa Senators on Thursday night at FLA Live Arena. So, Nick, Ekblad's on a 6-game point streak with 7 points. Brandon Montour is averaging 2 points a game in his last 5. Incredible. And it's so crazy how the Florida Panthers were just able to switch that special teams. What was the conversation last week after their game against Ottawa? They loved how they play at even strength. Just needed to fix their issues on the special teams. And boy, did that flip, going 6 for 6 on the penalty kill. Once again, including that 5-on-3 for a full 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Just incredible for this Panthers team. And, of course, 3 for 6 on the power play, including a shorthanded goal as well. Of course, by the captain as well. But and Sam Reinhart, got to give him his roses too. Another power play goal. And just this Florida Panthers team, they're riding high, and they go into a familiar place, which we've seen many battles over the last year and a half now of Florida Panthers versus Washington Capitals. I mean, the Capitals lost today against the Montreal Canadiens, but it's still not a game or a team to take lightly. I know they sold at the deadline. John Carlson's back for the Washington Capitals. I mean, if there's one team that really struggled when it came to a player going down, it's the Washington Capitals with John Carlson and what he can do on the blue line. Of course, Ovechkin's there, Oshie's there, Backstrom's there. I know Kuznetsov is wanting out right now of Washington there, but it's still a team with a lot of experience. When it came to just winning a cup a few years ago, but it's an opportunity for this Panthers team to just still keep it going.
So I have 2 thoughts on Saturday's game against the Capitals. And number one, what does Washington have to play for? My opinion, they have to play for health and getting ready for next season. It's glad to hear that John Carlson was able to come back this season after what had happened to him, which
broken skull.
That could have been life ending, and that could have also ended his career. I remember seeing Al McGinnis take a puck right to the eye and thinking, well, he's losing that eye. His career's over, and he miraculously came back and was able to play. But big ups to John for getting back in and being able to play. So that's one. What do they have to play for? My thing is people playing for jobs next year and staying healthy. The other thing is, I think they would like some payback. We beat them in the first round, and now they have a chance to make us miss the playoffs. So those are 2 bulletin boards things that I would think that are going against Florida right now. But other than that, I mean, you saw the Capitals team tonight, 2-6 to Montreal. Come on, that team right there is done, and they're just waiting for the draft.
Yeah, and selling at the deadline, a lot of their blue liners are definitely expiring deals, so they really have a chance to reload to help Washington contend next year with a lot of cap space. And I think there'll be a team that is just going to retool on the fly. Of course, that promise to Ovechkin saying that as long as you're chasing the goal record, they're going to try to build a winning team around. Not necessarily sure if it's going to be a cup contending team, of course, for the Caps, but they have that at their disposal. And then there's also no extension right now for Peter Laviolette too. So that's one thing to note for the Washington Capitals as far as their offseason coming up. But one more thought before one more conversation that I want to have before we sign off here is the 2 Kachucks having 2 different fights at the same time in the same sequence, not each other. Of course, the mother has a rule not to fight each other. What have you seen anything like this before? And also, when was the last time we experienced a game this long as well? That's just I felt like this game was never going to end.
So to answer your first point, definitely saw this in the late 80s, or in the 80s and in the 90s. It was, people would do things just to kind of get their team back into it. And, they lay a big hit, they start fighting, things like that. I mean, we see this today, but not to this magnitude of what happened tonight. And, I think Matthew Tkachuk just decided, like, hey, listen, I need to give my team another shot of energy because Ottawa was pretty much possessing the puck the whole time. And yeah, they were out shooting the Panthers, but he needed to give the team a spark. And he laid out DeBrincat, like, totally legal. I thought he knocked him out, to be honest.
I thought so too.
And then, he starts fighting. I forget who he was fighting. I think he fought like one of their defenders. I think he fought like Sanderson or something like that. And then right after that, Lyon gets run over again and all hell just breaks loose. So I don't want to see that again because the health of this team is too important. But the entertainment value and what the fans got tonight,
they got their money's worth.
They got their money's worth and some. So hopefully the team can play that kind of style at some point, like again, but maybe not this season. Maybe in the playoffs.
Yeah, and trying to refresh a natural stat trick to see the final shot attempts in all situations at 5-on-5 okay. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong game. Shot attempts, they were at 5-on-5, 65-29 shot attempts. Mm-hmm. All situations, it's not loading for some odd reason, but also one stat for Alex Lyon is 12 stops on the power play as well. So just incredible that he was able to even be in a great position, be at the top of his crease, take away the angles of his shot for his for the opposition as well. And that's just great to see that this guy is still continuing to just be confident in the crease and nothing phasing him in a moment like this, and just thankful nobody came out hurt from this game, because that could have been worse than it actually was. And I know I just the body language of Paul Maurice too.
He was really done.
Tough. He was just like and of course he's not gonna say he's gonna say certain things to the media, but I can only wonder what he's gonna say behind closed doors about what they were doing, maybe his respect or lack of respect for DJ Smith as well, and just going off it, because we know he could have a mouth on that bench.
Oh, really?
After the Toronto game.
Yeah.
Well, even the Seattle game at home back in November, we saw that firsthand, and I could only imagine what's being said. But the Panthers got through. They're 89 points on the season. Magic number's 5. And Nick, it's a good time here. It's a good time here for us. It's a good time for all of us who cheer on for this team. And more importantly, if the Panthers do make the postseason, Nick, we'll be seeing number one Matthew Tkachuk fan in the stands at FLA Live Arena, Brady Tkachuk, because when they made that trade for him, they made a trade for a fan who will be watching Matthew Tkachuk playing postseason games. And that's where I want to end it. That's where I want to end it today. So
I'm going to add one thing. They actually put his picture up on the Jumbotron today.
Oh, really?
During tonight's game, saying, hey, fans, thanks for tweeting out your pictures or putting them on Instagram. And one of them was Brady Tkachuk in the stands.
That's great. I'm so glad. I was not aware of that until you told me. Wow, amazing. But Nick, thank you so much once again for joining me on this Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, celebrating a 7-2 win for the Florida Panthers over the Ottawa Senators. Tell everybody where they can follow you online.
Armando, thanks for having me on again. Glad it was a victorious Thursday again, and we're not, in our sorrows. But everybody can follow me on Twitter at Prudentious0. Let's bring it home.
That's a good way to end it. Thank you, Nick, and I will see you next Thursday, hoping to be talking about a playoff matchup as well. So thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Now make your second listen of the day. Game to game NHL. Every moment, every top performance, every highlight. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NHL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. So I'm Armando Velez with Nick Fairbanks, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.